Okay, welcome to another episode of Taste of Magic. This episode we're going to be talking about time spiral cards and how they relate to cards from the past, the history of Magic. So I'm going to just jump right in because there's a lot of cards to go over. I'm not going to go over every single card, though pretty much every card in Time Spiral references another card in Magic, but I'm just going to talk about the big ones. First, I'm going to start with some cycles of 5 cards each that talk about some of the older cards. So I'm just going to do it right now. The first cycle is a cycle of 6 cards. Each has 0 mana cost, which means you can't cast it normally, but it does have a suspend cost, so you can suspend them. This is referencing 6 powerful spells in Magic, from the Black Lotus to Ancestral Recall. Ancestral Visions, which is the Ancestral Recall suspend card, was still so powerful that it still managed to get banned in Modern Block right when they made Modern Block. Some other cards are Restore Balance, which completely hoses the balance card. I don't think I've ever seen anyone play it. And Wheel of Fate, which is actually my favorite of all of them. I think it's even better than Wheel of Fortune because you don't have to spend the mana for Wheel of Fortune on the turn that it goes off, and you have that 2 extra mana to play cards that you draw from the effect. The next cycle is the Maguses. The Maguses, there was a cycle of 5 cards in each set of Time Spiral block. The Maguses and Time Spiral all reference artifact cards from the past. They did a pretty good job of putting artifacts into the color that they fit into the most, with green getting untapping lands, white destroying everything, and blue having more card draw, and red having more direct damage. And the Magus of the Mirror also switches life totals. The next cycle that I'm going to talk about is the totems. Each of these totems is an artifact you can tap for 1 mana of 1 color, and then if you pay a certain cost, then you can turn it into a creature that was represented in Magic. So, like, the blue one is the Chronotog, and the red one is the two-headed giant. These are a lot of fun. I don't think I've ever seen really anybody play these, but they probably were a lot of fun and limited. The next cycle is a cycle of 5 2-color legendary creatures. Each refers to a character in the history of Magic. The first one is Dralnu, the Lich Lord. His ability is similar to the card Lich, and he is the Lord of the Undead from Invasion Block. He was kind of the representation of the black side of the coalition, and he helped Gerard and the Weatherlight crew, but he had an ulterior motive. He wanted to turn everybody into undead. Next is Ith, the High Arcanist. He had a very famous card called the Maze of Ith. It's still used today, and his ability is just like it. He was a character in the Dark, and he was overthrown, and you can read all about it in one of the novels. The next one is Kervek, the Merciless, who he is from Mirage Block, and he's a character that was in the continent of Jamaru with Teferi and Mangora and Jolreel, and he had a storyline there where he was trying to take over the continent himself. Next is Safi, who is one of the most famous quoters on a Magic card with Akhan's Run, it's the Lurgoyf. It turns out this was not her dying breath, I guess. And finally, the last one is Stonebrow, who is a centaur from Krosa, and he was in the Onslaught block, helping Kamal overthrow all the bad guys. The next cycle is a cycle of Spell Shapers. Spell Shapers were from Mercadian Masks originally. The way they work is you can tap them, pay a mana cost, and discard a card representing the card you're casting, and they make it into the spell that you want. This is a series of 5 cards, and each one is a spell from Magic's past. They're not all that interesting, but I do like the Icatian Crier because it simulates a spell called Icatian Town, and it puts into play 1/1 white citizens, which you don't get white citizens very often. And there's also a Flowstone card, which is reminiscent of the Flowstone effect back in Mercadian Block. Finally, I'm going to talk about 2 cycles of sliver cards. The first is uncommon multicolored sliver cards. Each of them refers to a enchantment from the past, except for one. The first one is referring to the Fires of Yavimaya, which is a nice enchantment from Invasion. The second one is Ghostly Flame, which this was a enchantment that basically helped black and red get past circles of protection and the protection from red or black. Next is Aura Shards, which is great in a sliver deck because you don't have to have disenchants or naturalizes. You can just play more slivers to destroy artifacts and enchantments. Next is Reparations, which this one, whenever you get targeted by a spell, you can draw a card. This is also kind of reminiscent of the Crystalline Sliver, which originally gave Shroud. It's not as good as Shroud, but and then finally there is the Dementia Sliver, which is similar to Nebuchadnezzar all the way back from Legends, and that is all the multicolored ones. Next is a cycle of rare slivers. Each of these is just like a creature from Magic's past. The first one is the Fungal Sliver, which gives you +1/+1 counters when your sliver gets damaged. The next one is actually bad if you're playing more than one sliver, which is the Plague Sliver. It's just like the Jazam Djinn, which it kind of shows how far creatures have come because you still don't see people playing just one Plague Sliver, which would be the equivalent of a Jazam Djinn, but creatures are just so much more powerful now. Next is the Psionic Sliver, which is similar to the Psionic Entity. It has a weird effect where it does 2 damage to target creature or player, but then it does 3 damage to itself. Blue used to have direct damage with, the Tim card and everything, and I guess the thinking was that it was all telekinetic damage or magic damage, and so this is another card where if you actually pump it up and say you get out 2 muscle slivers and a fungal sliver, you could actually get +1/+1 counters every time you use that ability. Next is the white one, which is the Pulmonic Sliver. This sliver gives flying, which used to be from the Wing Sliver, but it gives another ability where if it's put into a graveyard, you can put it on top of the library. And finally is the Sedge Sliver, which is a weird effect from the Sedge Troll. Sedge Troll has another card that references it in Planar Chaos, and it also gives you +1/+1 as long as you control swamps. So that is all of the cycles that I'm going to talk about. I'm going to talk about a few more cards and some more episodes. I'll probably do at least one more episode on Time Spiral, possibly 2. And then I will also do a couple episodes on Planar Chaos, where I talk about the plane shifted cards. And finally, I will talk about Future Sight and the cards that have been reprinted from the Future Shifted cards and other cards that have been inspired from Future Sight. So I hope you'll join me in the next couple episodes.